The guy at the backcountry permit office called my loop ambitious and underlined the bear warnings 3 times. I thought he judged my boots. He was trying to warn me about the man in the red pack. He tapped my route, circled 2 drainages, and asked if I carried bear spray. I said yeah, like that solved everything. He didn't smile. He told me to hang my food, even if I was dead tired, and to report anything weird. And the way he said weird made my neck tighten. I laughed it off, made a joke about tourists feeding bears, and shoved the permit in my pocket like it was just paperwork. He held my eyes for an extra second, like he was deciding whether to say more. Then he slid the map back and told me to be careful with people out there. Not bears. People. I walked out feeling annoyed, like I'd been talked down to, like he assumed I was clueless. I even checked my reflection in the glass door, because I kept thinking he'd looked at my boots, my pack, my whole setup. I didn't get it yet. Day 2 out from Lamar, I kept seeing the same red pack ahead of me. Never at camp, never at trailheads. Just far enough away that I couldn't see his face, always moving when I moved, stopping when I stopped. I'd crest a rise and catch that red flash between trees, then it would slide behind a trunk and vanish. I'd speed up, thinking I'd run into him at the next junction, but the trail would go quiet. No podes, no golf, no siper. Just my own breathing and the little jingle of my pack buckles. I'd hit a trail register and see names from that morning, fresh ink, and still no sign he existed. No red pack signature, no scribbled initials, nothing. Once I even stepped off trail and waited just to see if he'd appear from behind like a normal hiker. Nothing came. Then 20 minutes later, I'd see that red pack again, same distance ahead, like it had been placed there. I try to talk myself down because paranoia feels stupid in daylight. People leapfrog, trails funnel you, but the distance never changed like he measured it. If I stopped to filter water, the red pack stopped. If I pushed hard up a climb, it stayed ahead, same gap. I never saw him pass me. I never heard it behind me. I never saw him stop for lunch. I kept expecting to catch up and exchange that awkward hiker nod, and it never happened. I checked the dirt for prints and kept finding boot marks that weren't mine, deeper and wider, with a toe that kicked out like the person was shifting weight while waiting. Sometimes they weren't even on the trail, like he'd been walking the edge, in the brush, where you don't normally walk unless you're trying not to be obvious. That evening, I dropped into a drainage where a creek ran cold and loud. The designated site was right there, post and fire ring, and I should have kept going, but my heel burned from a blister and I didn't want a night hike. I set up fast, hummed my food, ate standing up, kept scanning the trees like I expected that red pack to pop out and wave at me. Once the last elk bugle died, the valley went dead. Even the bugs shut up. I lay in my bag and listened to the creek until my brain finally let go and I drifted. Around midnight, I woke to metal clicking. Not branches, not an animal brushing my guy line. A snap, then a soft whine, then something thrashing hard in the brush. It hit the ground and burst like it was yanking and slipping and yanking again. My whole body locked. I grabbed my bear spray inside my bag because I didn't want to unzip the tent and announce myself. I held my breath, then realized that made my ears ring, so I forced myself to breathe slow through my nose. I tried to make sense of it, and all I could think was, that's not an animal sound, that's tools. I thought bear trap and froze. Then a man chuckled out there. Not happy, not drunk. Satisfied, like he'd just confirmed something. The thrashing turned wet and ugly, like whoever was stuck started choking. The brush shook, then it shook less, and I heard that thin whine again, like something tightening. Then it stopped with a wet, choking sound that made my stomach flip. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loud. I stared at the tent wall until my eyes burned and tears sat in the corners because I wouldn't blink. Wouldn't even wipe my face because I didn't want to move at all. I lay in my bag and listened to him drag whatever it was away, cursing about wasted bait. The scrape went over roots and stones, then down toward the creek. He stopped once and grunted like whatever he had was heavy. He muttered again, annoyed, like he'd lost time on a chore. Then it faded. No animal noise after. No yelp. No struggling. Just that creek, steady, and indifferent, like it could wash anything clean if you waited long enough. I stayed frozen until my legs cramped and my hands went numb around the cam like I'd been holding ice. Morning didn't feel safe. It felt like evidence. I packed with my head on a swivel, flinching at every clink of gear, and I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed it until my boot swung forward and I saw the loop. At dawn, I pretended nothing happened, packed up, and nearly stepped into it. A snare made from paracord and cable anchored to a buried rebar stake. Not for a rabbit, for a leg. The loop sat open right where you'd walk from the fire ring to the water, dusted with needles, and it still flashed when the light hit it. I backed up so fast I almost fell. It was set at ankle height, perfect, and the cable had that greasy shine like it had been handled a lot. A few feet away, the ground was chewed up. Not a neat scuff. Long smears like something got dragged while it kicked and tried to dig in. 2 trees nearby had bark ripped off in strips and deep claw marks raked down them. Not little scratches, long gouges like panic. And there was this faint smell underneath the clean creek air, something sour and wrong that made my throat tighten again. My first instinct was to take a photo. My second was realizing my phone was dead. I dug for my power bank and remembered, with this sick drop in my gut, that I'd left it plugged in at the last campsite like an idiot. I stood there with my dead phone and that cable loop and the memory of that chuckle, and I felt small in a way I hate admitting. I didn't touch the snare. I didn't want my fingerprints on it, and I didn't want to find out what it felt like when it tightened. I just shouldered my pack and got away, fast, stepping wide like the ground wanted to grab me. I left the trail and cut cross-country, stupid, desperate, trying to hit the next segment early. The trail felt predictable. Off-trail felt like I might break my ankle, but I wanted out of whatever rhythm I'd fallen into with that red pack. Brush tore my sleeves. Wet roots slid under my boots. I kept stopping to listen and kept hearing nothing but my own pulse and the creek fading behind me. I kept thinking about that satisfied chuckle and how close it had been and how I'd slept in a tent like a fucking idiot. Came around a bend, and there he was, red pack on the ground, crouched over a second snare he hadn't finished burying. Short shovel, coil of cable, calm hands, like this was yard work and I'd wandered into his backyard. He didn't startle when he saw me. He lifted his head like he'd been waiting for it. His face looked sunburned and dirty, beard patchy, eyes flat. Nothing theatrical. That made it worse. He looked like a guy you'd pass in a gas station and forget. We locked eyes. He smiled slow, like we'd finally met on his schedule. Knife in his hand, not huge but dirty. The blade looked used. I could smell him from where I stood, sour sweat and old smoke. My hand went to the bear spray, and I hated that it felt like a toy. I wanted to yell. I wanted to run. I didn't either because my body went into this cold, careful mode where every move felt loud. He said, "You keep leaving your little boot prints where I work." Voice flat, accusing. I told him I'd seen his traps. Said I'd marked them on GPS and toll rangers. Total lie. My phone was dead. The words spilled out anyway, because my brain wanted him to believe someone would come looking. He studied my face like he was reading a label. His eyes flicked to my hands, my waist, my pack straps like he was counting options. I watched his knife hand and tried to decide if I could spray him fast enough before he closed the distance. My fingers shook on the trigger. Then he stepped aside, pointed his knife down trail, and said, "You walk out now, and you never come back in this drainage. You come back, you're meat like everything else. Understand?" I nodded. I walked. I didn't run. I felt his stare between my shoulder blades for miles. Every snap behind me made my stomach drop. I kept expecting cable to bite my ankle, expecting my leg to yank out from under me, expecting that satisfied chuckle again. When I finally saw other hikers, I wanted to grab them and tell them to turn around, but my mouth wouldn't work. I just kept moving because I couldn't shake the feeling that if I slowed down, I'd give him another chance. At the ranger station, I reported every detail. I talked too fast. I had to stop and swallow because my throat kept closing. They nodded, wrote it down, said they'd monitor the area. I pushed back, probably sounding like an asshole, and one of them got stiff like I'd accused them personally. They asked if I had photos, if I had coordinates, if I could describe him better than Guy with a red pack. I gave him what I had. They gave me a calm face and a clipboard. No follow-up. No arrest. Too big a park, too few of them. Now, when people talk about grizzlies and wolves in Yellowstone, I think of that red pack and the cable around a human ankle, and I know exactly what I'm more afraid of. My rental died on the stretch between Norris and Canyon, where the lodge lights vanish and the trees lean in. Engine just coughed once and quit. No cell service, no other cars, just that stupid boiling egg smell drifting from some unseen vent. I've been driving that thin Tulane like it was a hallway, headlights swallowing the asphalt and nothing else, trying to make it a canyon before the last bit of warmth bled out. The car already had that tired rattle when you hit 40, and the air freshener fought a losing war against old coffee. When it died, it didn't die like a dramatic movie stall. It just lost well. The dash lit up, the steering went heavy, and I coasted to the shoulder with my hazard lights clicking like they were judging me. I rolled to a stop right where the trees leaned closest, like they'd been waiting. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. Just that dry starter tick and then silence. I sat there with both hands on the wheel, waiting for the dash to magically fix itself, and all I got was the sulfur stink getting stronger. It wasn't just from the vents either. It hung outside the car too, which made it worse because I couldn't even tell if it was my battery cooking off or the damn earth. I stepped out and the cold hit me in the teeth. The wind came off the ridge and shoved at my jacket like it wanted to push me into the tree line. I held my phone up, rotated it, walked in a stupid circle. 0 bars. Not even that fake emergency-only tease. I tried dialing 911 anyway. The call screen just spun, then died. I tried texting a friend and watched the message sit there with that unsent icon, mocking me. I popped the hood, stared at the mess like I knew anything, and yelled a few useless fucks at the sky. It was late shoulder season. Most campgrounds already closed. Wind cut hard once the sun slid behind the ridge. Under the hood, everything looked wrong and normal at the same time. No hose hanging loose, no cartoon smoke cloud, just heat and that smell and a faint hiss somewhere I couldn't pin down. I leaned in close and immediately regretted it because the heat slapped my face and the smell coated my tongue. I backed off fast, coughing, and glanced over my shoulder at the trees because fear makes you do that. I don't know cars. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, so I wouldn't do anything stupider than slam the hood like the car could feel shame. I tried to flag down the universe by standing half in the lane and waving my arms. Nothing came. The quiet out there isn't quiet, it's loaded. Headlights eventually appeared from the canyon side. Relief hit so fast I felt dizzy. Old station wagon, wood paneling, park sticker 3 years out of date. It rolled past me, braked, then backed up way too slow. The slow backing made my relief turn weird. Most people stop fast when someone's stranded. This guy crept like he was lining up a shot. I walked up toward his driver door anyway, because what else do you do? And my voice came out too loud when I yelled for help, like I was trying to prove I wasn't scared. Driver's window stayed up. Middle-aged guy with sunburnt cheeks and a park ball cap watched me through glass, wiper squeaking. He didn't crack the window, didn't say hi, just lifted his phone like he took a picture of me. Stuck. I saw the screen glow, the little tilt of his wrist, and I got that cold spike of anger like I'd been caught doing something private. I leaned closer, trying to catch his eyes through the glare, and that's when I noticed how still his face was. No smile, no frown, just blank like he'd turn it off. The phone flashed, or maybe my brain decided it did, but either way I felt my skin crawl. I did this ugly half-wave, half-point at my car, like I was explaining a problem to a mannequin. I waved for help. He stared another few seconds, then nodded once and drove on. No offer of a ride. No, you okay? I shouted at the taillights, and it got eaten by the trees. He didn't speed up. He just left. I stood there raging until I noticed his taillights stop just beyond the next curve. They didn't turn or fade. They just sat there, red dots in the dark. At first I thought maybe he pulled into a turnout I couldn't see. Maybe he was calling it in. Maybe he had some weird park worker rule. Then the dots didn't drift or bounce like a car idling. They stayed fixed like he parked and set his foot on the brake just to keep them bright. The longer I stared, the more those lights felt like eyes, not because I'm poetic, but because my body started reacting like I was being watched. My shoulders hunched. My hands kept opening and closing. I got back in my dead car and locked the doors. 10 minutes, then 20. His lights didn't move. I killed my interior dome, so he couldn't see me as clearly. My breath fogged the glass. Temperature dropped fast. The car cooled down, and the plastic started creaking, little pops, and ticks like something shifting inside the dash. I kept flinching, then hating myself for flinching. I kept wiping a circle with my sleeve so I could watch. The glass kept fogging again, like the car was breathing with me. I checked my phone a dozen times. No service. I opened the camera anyway, and all I got was 2 smeared red stars. I thought about walking toward him, then pictured him staying quiet the whole time, and my legs went weak. I also pictured him stepping out without turning off the brake lights, just letting the car sit there while he moved through the trees. That thought lodged in my head and wouldn't leave. I dug through the glove box for anything, flashlight, flare, even a pen, and found a rental agreement and a roadside number that meant nothing without signal. I found a tire iron in the trunk and brought it into the front seat like a talisman, then felt stupid for needing it. My hands started to shake from adrenaline and cold, and I kept telling myself to stop, like you can order your body around when it's convinced you're prey. Coyotes started up somewhere in the trees. Something larger crashed, threw deadfall a ways off. I fought the urge to honk or flash, to remind him I existed. The coyotes yipped and laughed, and it went on long enough that it stopped sounding like background noise and started sounding like an argument. The bigger crash came again, closer, and I couldn't tell if it was an elk moving through brush or a bear deciding what to do with me. At one point, I heard gravel crunch on the far side of the road, slow and deliberate, and I held my breath until my lungs hurt. I didn't see anything, but the sound didn't belong to the wind. I watched those taillights until my eyes hurt. Once, I swear I saw them brighten for half a second, like a foot pressed the brake harder, and my throat closed up because it meant he was awake and paying attention. I kept my hands off the horn. I kept imagining that as soon as I made noise, he'd take it as permission to come back. My hazard click felt suddenly loud, so I turned them off and sat in the dark for a minute, heart slamming, then turned them back on because I couldn't stand not being visible. After almost an hour of that standoff, another vehicle came from the north side, a Ranger truck this time. The wagon's taillights snapped off the second the beam hit the curve. By the time the Ranger reached me, it was gone. It wasn't a normal turnoff either. The lights didn't swing away. They just disappeared, like someone killed them on purpose. The Ranger rolled up fast, gravel spitting, and a spotlight painted the tree lean in harsh white. He looked at my car, then at me, like he was deciding if I was broken down or just doing something shady. He jump-started my car, checked my plates, gave me a lecture about breakdown kits. I tried to explain the wagon without sounding hysterical, which is hard when your mouth tastes like metal and your stomach keeps dropping. When I asked if he'd passed an old wagon, he frowned. Said he'd seen fresh tire tracks on a closed service road just back there, gate chain undone and rehung. He said it like he didn't want to say more, like naming it made it bigger. Then he told me to keep my doors locked until the car was running, like he hadn't noticed my hand was still wrapped around the tire iron. My car finally turned over, rough at first, then settling into an idle like it hadn't just tried to leave me out there. The Ranger told me to head straight to the next lit area. No stops, and he stayed behind me as I pulled back onto the road. I drove like my license depended on it, eyes flicking to the mirror every second, expecting those red dots to bloom again out of the trees with no warning. Maybe the guy was just a creep. Maybe he was waiting to see if I started walking. I still think about those red dots in the trees, patient as a fucking predator, and I'm glad the Ranger came when he did. Night shift at Old Faithful sounds romantic until the steam starts talking. I worked at the lodge one summer, the kid who wiped tables and hauled trash. I wasn't some mystic or thrill seeker. I was 19, broke, and running on caffeine and spite because tourists treated staff like furniture. All day, people snapped their fingers at me for refills and then complained the coffee tasted sulfur Y, like I had personally brewed it out of the ground. My supervisor, Dale, loved power the way some people love cigarettes. He'd hover, wait for you to slip, then grin like he caught a fish. That night, we closed late because a bus group wouldn't leave. I dumped trash, wiped the same sticky tables twice, and Dale tried to pin a missing tip envelope on me. I told him to check the cameras. He told me to watch my attitude. I walked out back shaking with anger, needing air, needing space, needing anything that wasn't him. Sometimes, after closing, I'd walk the boardwalk alone. The basin at 1 a.m. feels like a living thing. Ground hissing, pools glowing electric blue, stars sharp enough to cut you. The planks flex under your boots, in sweat from the steam. The air tastes like pennies and rotten eggs. They made us sit through safety talks where they showed photos of shoes and belts found near the springs, like the person had just stepped out of them and vanished. Rangers said it calm, like weather. Stay on the walkways, don't cross ropes, don't trust the crust. Nobody laughed during those slides, but everybody went right back to acting like it couldn't happen to them. That week, a side trail had been closed for thermal activity. Rope across, sign clear, do not enter. They doubled the reflectors and kept repeating the warning to staff because tourists kept trying to sneak in for photos. In the cafeteria, maintenance guys talked low about a fresh collapse and temp spiking. A dishwasher kid swore he heard people crying out there at night. Everyone called him dramatic and told him to shut up, but he wouldn't look at the windows after dark. I pretended I didn't care, but I kept noticing how the Rangers got tight whenever someone mentioned that closure. One night, I passed the rope and the steam drifted thick over it. In it, there was this faint metallic whispering like someone argued far away through a fan. It rose and fell like a crowd, shifting around a doorway. I slowed down because it didn't match the usual hiss, and because my brain does this stupid thing where it tries to turn danger into curiosity. A man stood just beyond the rope. No flashlight, no phone, hands in his pockets like he waited for a bus, not perched over a scalding vent. Dark jacket, dark pants, no reflective anything. He didn't look lost. He looked planted, like the spot belonged to him. My first instinct wasn't fear. It was rage. Another asshole ignoring signs. Another liability I'd get blamed for because I was the one who saw him. I snapped that the trail was closed. He didn't flinch. He didn't even turn toward me. He just tilted his head at the nearest pool where the water simmered hard, surface roiling. "You hear it?" he asked. I did. Beneath the normal gurgle came a different sound. Voices, layered, too many at once. Not words, just urgent noise like a crowd behind a door. It grabbed my ribs and squeezed. I tried to force a normal explanation into place. Vents, echo, wind, distant campers. But the sound felt close. It felt directed, like it wanted my attention. He stepped over the rope, boots inches from fragile crust. That should have cracked, should have flaked, should have made him scramble. It didn't. He moved like he knew exactly where it was safe, like he'd walked it 100 times. "They all went down fast," he said. "Doesn't take long. Skin comes off in sheets." His tone was wrong, flat, like he'd read it off a pamphlet, and somehow almost pleased. I moved closer without thinking, pure staff brain. If somebody dies, everybody blames whoever saw it and didn't stop it. Dale would love that. The park would toss me out and call it protocol. So I reached for his arm to yank him back. His sleeve felt cold, not cool, cold like he'd stood in a freezer. Under my hand, his muscle didn't tense. It didn't feel like anything. For a second, my fingers seemed to sink too far, like the fabric went on without a body. I jerked my grip, heart hammering, then grabbed again harder because my brain refused to accept what my hand was telling me. The cold seeped into my palm and sat there like a bruise. He smiled without looking at me and said, "Some of them don't know they're dead. They just keep calling hands over the rail." The word hands made my own fingers twitch. I pictured people slipping, grabbing the boards, not finding purchase, and the image hit so hard I tasted bile. The steam thickened. The boardwalk beneath us vibrated, a low hum like a huge engine spooling up. It wasn't just sound. It was pressure, like the air got heavier. The voices in the pool surged until I wanted to clap my hands over my ears. My eyes watered. My stomach flipped. The man leaned forward a little, like he was listening for a specific voice. Then a flashlight beam hit us from behind. "Hey, off the trail," a real ranger barked. Human, loud, normal. I jumped and yanked my hand back. The man beside me vanished. No step, no splash, no movement. 1 second there, the next second gone. The ranger stormed up and grabbed the back of my shirt like I was a dog headed for traffic. He tore into me about closures and rules and how the park doesn't need another Boyle victim. I kept trying to say there'd been someone else, that I grabbed him, that he was right there. The ranger shined his light around. No footprints past the rope but mine. The crust looked untouched. The rope didn't even sway. For a second, his face did this tight shift, like he heard something too, like he didn't want to admit it, and then he snapped back into anger because anger was easier. He marched me toward the lodge and made me sign an incident slip. My name came out shaky, like my hand didn't belong to me. I asked him who the man was. He stared at me like I'd asked the dumbest question on earth and said, "Low, stay off closed trails," and pushed me out the door. Next day, I tried to find that ranger to ask again, like maybe in daylight it would sound less insane. I saw him near the visitor center, talking to another ranger, and when he noticed me, he turned his body just enough to block my approach, like he was closing a door. He didn't wave me over. He didn't even nod. He just watched me with that blank, tired look people get when they're done with questions. That's what really fucked me up. How hard he worked to act like nothing happened. Like if he didn't name it, it couldn't crawl out of the steam and follow him home. Back at the dorm, my palm burned like a sunburn. I scrubbed in the sink until the skin went pink like I could wash off that cold. It didn't help. I tried to sleep and kept jolting awake because I swear I could feel something tugging at my fingers, testing my grip. The dorm radiator clicked, the hallway fan kicked on, and every time the sound lined up just right, it carried that same crowded whisper, and my chest locked up. Over the next few days, the burn got mean. Skin peeled over and over in thin, curling strips like I'd dipped that hand in too hot water. It came off clean, almost neat, which freaked me out more than if it looked messy. Underneath, it looked new and raw. I wrapped it and lied at the clinic that I'd grab a hot pan because nobody wanted the real story and I didn't want to hear myself say it out loud. The nurse gave me ointment and a bored look and told me to be more careful. When I asked, casually, if people ever got weird burns from steam, she shut down and changed the subject fast. Dale saw the bandage and accused me of faking to get lighter duty. He said it loud in front of 2 servers. I snapped. I told him to go fuck himself, and he threatened to kick me out of employee housing. I almost quit right there, but I didn't want to go home and admit my mom was right, so I kept working with one hand and a bad temper. My friends stopped inviting me out because I'd sit there staring at the edge of tables and railings like they were the only thing between me and something hungry. I stopped walking at night. Still, the basin followed me. Anytime a vent fan roared in the kitchen, the noise tightened my chest because it carried that same packed murmur. Sometimes, taking trash out behind the lodge, I'd hear something like fingertips on wood in the back of my mind, and I'd spin around and see nothing but steam drifting over the roofs. Once I woke up with my bad hand clenched, so hard my nails cut skin, and I couldn't remember the dream, only the feeling of too many hands reaching. I don't pretend to know if that man was ever alive. I know Yellowstone can eat you in 10 seconds and leave nothing but a hat. And I know some nights when the basin fogs and the ground hums, I hear that crowded whisper again and feel fingers, too many fingers, reaching for the rail.